to do a very different video today, so just let you know straight from the outset, this is not going to be your usual Hammers Chat sort of West Ham video. Although it is West Ham and interactions of West Ham fans, stuff that's going on with David Moyes, the feel-bad factor around the club, that has really prompted this video. And I was sort of scratching around. I wanted to do it yesterday. I avoided doing it. And even today, I found myself scratching around thinking, should I do that Daniel Cummins video about the young lad who's probably going to sign a pre-contract agreement from Celtic? But it wasn't really what I wanted to talk about, actually. And I think that's sort of part of the point. I found myself censoring myself more and more very recently. And today I was scratching around looking for something to talk about, because West Ham it's very low at West Ham at the moment. It's, as I said, the feel-bad factor. People are arguing, West Ham fans arguing amongst themselves online, but we'll get to that. The David Moyes situation is being used by a stick to beat other West Ham fans with as well. And it's not particularly good. The team have not performed well. I think we're on a massive hangover. I think we're on a crash. I think we got rid of Lopetegui. We were expecting things to get better, and then when we looked at that result against Brentford, even though it's just one result, it's man. I think we've realised that actually this season's a write-off, really, and I think that's quite new for West Ham. It's not been that way for a few years, has it? So, hey, look, maybe we've been spoilt. But anyway, I found myself sort of editing in my mind before doing a video, and I thought, you know what, I'm actually sick of doing it. And it was really something that happened whilst listening to Gio do his review on Saturday night, the review of the Brentford game. And as Gio started to speak, Gio uttered these words, and I understand why he uttered them, but it sort of sickened me, right, that he had to do it. He said, just to let everybody know, all I'm doing now is reviewing the 90 minutes. This is not an overview of Graham Potter's career at West Ham. And I thought, well, of course it is. It's a bloody review. But see, the thing is, you have to do that. You have to do that. And I'm sort of sick of doing it, and I'm going to stop doing it because I did it myself. In fact, I've been doing it a lot recently, truth be known. I wanted to criticise Thomas Souček in that game. And I didn't really without having to do this disclaimer. And I sat there saying, I'd just like to say, I think that Thomas Souček will be a West Ham legend. I think Thomas Souček's a really good guy. And you have to do these caveats. You have to do these disclaimers before you make your point. And it is, I've realised that I've been tailoring my content and tailoring what I've been saying almost to try and not offend the 3 or 4% of people that might not get it and might be offended. And it's actually a crazy thing to do. And I think it sort of reached its peak with Tim Steidten. I was really pleased that Tim Steidten came in. In the end, I started to get suspicious of him because he'd fallen out with Lopetegui, he'd fallen out with David Moyes. I thought, is this guy trouble? Yeah, every time I would say it, I've got nothing personal against Tim Steidten. And that's because people would type, you're attacking Tim Steidten. You've got a vendetta. And you know what? And the thing is, so as you try and prove that you're not attacking anyone, you don't have a vendetta, you start to caveat everything. And what you basically end up with is you end up with saying nothing. You end up keeping probably the things you're really thinking to yourself because you don't want to be attacked online. And what you end up doing is you end up trying to appeal to a very small percentage of people you're never going to appeal to, who don't like you anyway. And you end up giving a diluted, watered-down video to your long-time subscribers and the people who probably enjoy what you're doing and the people who are here for the right reasons. I thought, this is madness. This is absolute madness. Because I do believe that most people will understand that if you're talking about a game of football, you're talking about a game of football. That if you are assessing how well someone or badly someone has passed or dribbled or performed in a football match, you're not attacking them as a person. You're not saying they're a bad dad, or you're not accusing them of taking money out of a charity pot or something like that. You are just commenting on a game of football. And I just think that the whole thing has gone mad. And I've been suckered in by it. I really have. And I ain't doing it anymore. I ain't doing it anymore. Do you know what I wanted to say the other day and I didn't say it? This is what I didn't say it. This is how crazy it's become. I wanted to say, I don't think that Thomas Souček, Edson Alvarez, and Lucas Paqueta can operate in the same team. Do you know what I did? I threw Soler in there to try and, I don't know, even just to try and dilute it. I think as good as those players might be individually, I think even collectively, they lack pace and athleticism. I think you're probably going to need one in there. I'm not even sure, truth be known, that Thomas Souček and Edson Alvarez can play in the same team. Yet there I was trying to explain it, trying to explain to everybody I don't want them sold, and this obvious stuff, sort of watering it down again. And I just found it, I had found myself doing that. So just so you know, after a game, Gio goes live and I come down here and I record. So we're actually recording at the same time, but my video goes up later. So when I'm at the point of me recording, I don't know what Gio said. Yet I found myself treading on eggshells through this video on things that weren't offensive anyway. I wasn't talking about politics. I wasn't talking about religion. I wasn't talking about anything that really anyone should tread on eggshells about. I was talking about a game of football. Yet because I didn't want to upset the trolls, there I was tip-tapping around, basically trying to appease a bunch of idiots, rather than the 99% of intelligent people who just wanted to talk about the game. Because the vast majority of people saw that game probably as I saw it, which we were slow as shit, right? Anyway, I started watching Gio's video, and there he was, giving his explanation, appeasing to the trolls, trying to just explain that he wasn't talking about Graham Potter. Anyway, it didn't matter that I did the appeasement. It didn't matter that Gio did the appeasement. As someone pointed out, we did Patreon yesterday, which is really where this rant has come from, because I started to voice a couple of my annoyances on Patreon. And somebody said that both me and Gio had both been accused of wanting Graham Potter out. Now, the thing is preposterous. It's a preposterous accusation, but it just goes to show, even if you go out of your way to explain and double explain and tread on eggshells, and you just explain, I thought this was Potter's first bad game, first bad performance. You're not going to insulate yourself. People are still going to come at you with bullshit. And it doesn't matter, right? And in many respects, what Gio said and then what those comments have done, they've done me a favour. Because I've got to admit, for a while now, I've stopped reading the comments. And so what I'm doing is I'm reading a load. I'm refusing to read a load of good comments from good people who just want to talk about the game, just so I can avoid a small percentage. I don't need to do it. There's a facility on YouTube, right? You can basically ignore people. You can mute them. And that's just what I'm going to be doing. I just think if people are going to get personal, and people have got personal, by the way, it's just, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. And so I'm just going to carry on, and I'm just going to speak my mind. And it's because, you know what? I think I'm all right. I'm not a bad guy. I don't mean anyone in ill will. I haven't got anything personally against anyone. I'm just commenting on a football match, or sometimes a signing, or, you know, if it's in the case of Tim Stuyton or whatever, a signing that might not have worked out. I'm commenting that maybe we paid too much on a contract. I'm not calling anyone a bad guy here. Do you know what I mean? And I was just thinking, you know, if people can't understand it, there's just no point in me caveating it. So there you go. So I'm going to swig of my tea. I'm not finished yet, by the way. Hold on. I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do. All right. I'm going to basically, I think I've stopped being myself. And it's like bloody, honestly, it's like a virus, the internet. And I understand that I understand the contradiction and the irony of saying that. Because I make my living on the internet. This is what I do. This is my job now. It's just what my job became. So I'm reliant on people watching the videos. I'm reliant on people interacting. I've looked at myself and I've looked back and I've tried to reflect on some of my most recent videos. I think, they've been bland as hell. And I can only apologise to you for that, because I haven't really been true to myself. I haven't been calling things as I see them. I've been seeing stuff and thinking, right, how can I filter that, basically? And what you end up doing is you end up mashing things down and like spoon feeding it. I don't want. I can't be asked. Right? I can't be asked with that. So I think that's really the first thing. But I do believe at the moment it's a funny old time to be a West Ham fan. And people are angry with one another. West Ham fans are angry with one another. And it's hard to see. Because when you look at that, you think, this West Ham family, it's a load of bollocks. But it's not. It's not a load of bollocks. Only recently, where we were trying to get an operation for Jeff the dog, it was you lot. You lot helped out, you know. There is a West Ham family there. When I was back in, whenever it was, 2020, 2021, whatever, middle of COVID, honestly, my world crashed down around me, right? I lost my job, break up with my family, my mental health was at rock bottom. I jumped on here, and a tearful me jumped on and did a video and said I'm not well. My mental health was so bad, so bad. And I was very much embraced by the West Ham family. Honestly, people really took care of me. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible what happened. So there is a West Ham family. But I just think sometimes they're just different people. There's just a bunch of decent people. And then, unfortunately, there's some arseholes. And I look at what's going on social media at the moment, and I've got to call it out, because I've been thinking it for the last little while. And it's not nice, right? It's not nice. Let me be honest with you about like the mental health thing here. Before it happened to me, I didn't really believe it. It's true. I was almost a little bit of a pull yourself together merchant. It's not the only thing. I didn't believe in migraines until I got one either. I remember getting a migraine about 10 years ago. I always thought it was a headache. Well, it's just a headache, take paracetamol. Once I got one, I thought, oh, right, actually, I believe in it now. But, and anyway, I wasn't a great believer in mental health. I just thought, you know what, we all have ups and downs. Sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. It wasn't until my mental health crashed that I absolutely started thinking, okay, well, this is an issue, And then I started listening to other people. And what would happen was people would come in, because I'd been open about my poor mental health, people were coming forward to me, and they were saying, well, I've been suffering with this. I thought, it was really like an insight, and it opened my mind into, there's a lot of people struggling. I think more so, I think the modern world doesn't help, by the way. I tell you what definitely doesn't help, is social media and stuff like that. Again, I understand the irony and the contradiction. I'm doing this. I can't control social media. I can try and make sure the comments on these videos are a friendlier place, though, and I'm going to do that, all right? I'm going to do that. I'll tell you now, I'm just going to kick arseholes out. It's as simple as that, and they won't be able to, post again. Granted, they can probably go and get a new IP address, create a new account, get a new Gmail, go through all these steps and start commenting again, but you can't stop that, and that is, they're so determined to do that, it's just very, very, very difficult. But I've been looking at stuff, and I think because of that, I've been more aware of other people's mental health. And I think one of the worst things I saw in the last few days, actually not one of the worst things, but one of the most disappointing things I saw in the last few days was somebody who, and it's a social media account, who's quite hot on giving platitudes about mental health. About they'll retweet something. Maybe it's Mental Health Awareness Day, or maybe there's something and they'll retweet it, or they'll make a thing about it. Yet they forget all about mental health in the way that they engage with somebody. And there they were, this person that was claiming to be like a bastion, claiming to be the upholder of everything about mental health, was there calling someone an idiot. Saying there's something wrong with your head, mate. Well, I think, well, what is it? What is it? Do you care about people, and do you care about people's mental health? Or are you going to just basically call people out and basically insult them, goad them, taunt them? And I thought it was really unpleasant. And I reckon if you pointed out to this person they're unpleasant, they probably wouldn't believe it, because they probably think, but you think, there was someone the other day, again, same old thing. And unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is, I'll get to the David Moyes bit in a minute, a lot of this stuff centres around David Moyes. And over David Moyes, he'd called someone a retard. You're a retard. What? I mean, that is, I I'd rather be called a see you next Tuesday. I really would, right? But then I couldn't help it. I clicked on their profile. 3 posts down, they'd shared this post about mental health. What is it, mate? What is it? What is it? So basically, you care about mental health until somebody says something you don't agree with about David Moyes. Then it's fair game. You could insult their mental health. I cannot tell you, I cannot distance myself enough from these people. I do not recognise it. I do not like it. I do not appreciate it. It is unpleasant. And the irony of people that do that, calling you, or me in this instance, unpleasant for daring to say, maybe Thomas Souček shouldn't be in the team next time, which is just a sporting opinion. The David Moyes thing is an issue. Sorry, another swig of tea. I've been speaking a long time, but look, you've either got this, which is what I care passionately about, or me say, oh, Daniel Cummins is having a medical at West Ham. I wonder when. I wonder who's going to play in the first team. Look, news is thin on the ground, right? It really is. News is thin on the ground, and people are losing interest in West Ham. Hold on. Because of a combination of the stadium, because of a combination of a poor transfer window, because a series of poor decisions at board level have reduced us to what we are now. It looks like the Lopetegui appointment was a huge mistake. It looks like that could set us back at a very, very long time. And because of that, people are going at each other. Sorry, my mind's jumping all over the place here. Let's go with the stadium first, shall we? People are sick of the stadium, all right? And there's a lot of people now voicing their concerns. And I think there are 2 reasons for that. I think it's because of the concession stuff has made people absolutely sick. And I think it's also the fact that we're losing. But you also have to appreciate that time wears people down over a period of time. That stadium is not easy to get to. The Elizabeth line, which was really meant to connect sort of where I am, this part of the world, with East London, was broken. I don't know if you drive on the M20. Basically, M25 junction 10, again, not a million miles from where I am, is broken. So it's just really hard to drive or get the train anywhere. It's getting so hard in terms of transport to get there. It starts to wear you down, and then at the end of it, you just want to leave, and you're not allowed to leave. There are stewards there with stop-go signs stopping you from leaving. It can take, and often does, take 45 minutes to walk from the stadium to the station, and that's if you're lucky because they're holding you in. I think people get sick of it, and what you've got now is a load of people voicing for any of those reasons, and probably more besides, are voicing their concerns, and they're just thinking, well, this is crap. Why couldn't we stay at Upton Park? When they're doing that, there's a few people who are just jumping on, why don't you stop talking about it, stop moaning about it. It's just, okay, it's gone, forget it, it's over. And so you have these group of people who are trying to limit what people speak about. The great irony is on this, one of the people I've seen telling other people to shut up, you go and click on the top of his profile, and he's there claiming about the loss of free speech at the moment, and because someone's been, well, anyway, whatever, doesn't matter. And I think that the thing is, people are now saying, well, hold on a second, it's not the stadium, it's the fans. And what people do is they produce an example. So the main example tends to be the atmosphere in the Europa League game against Sevilla. And they say, well, here we go. See, it is the people. It's because if you look at what happened in Sevilla, everyone was laughing, joking, singing. It was raucous, it was noisy. Bloody was. I know, I was there. So what that is, that's used as a roadblock. So basically, I reject your argument and you are no longer allowed to speak further. What it doesn't allow for is any nuance. Because Sevilla was loud, your argument is null and void. It doesn't take into account any nuance. It doesn't take into account that that was a really exciting game, that West Ham, the mood around West Ham was riding on the crest of a wave. It doesn't take into account that the ticketing was really, really difficult for that game, if you remember. Those tickets ended up in the hands of West Ham fans. If you haven't been to the ground up at London Stadium over recent years, you'll be no doubt aware that not only do a lot of opposition fans go into the home end, they do so wearing their club strip. And they do so relatively openly as well. So there are a number of reasons why. I also think at that point we hadn't really been worn down by it. But it doesn't take any of that into account. It's just a shut up, don't talk about it. And these are West Ham fans talking to other West Ham fans. And it is a weird way because we've not, I think even just as human beings, we've not been programmed to speak like this and converse like this. So if I was sat down in this room with you now, we'd have a conversation. So maybe if you thought the problem was the fans and not the stadium, and I thought it was the stadium, I would say my bit, and you might turn around and say, but mate, what about Sevilla? That was really loud there. Then I would say my bit, then you'd say your bit. We'd have a conversation. What you wouldn't do is sat in this room and say, you shut up. My example is Sevilla. Watch that. Stop talking. Say no more. End of capital letters. Fact. You don't have conversations like that. That's not how it works. But that's the way it works on social media. That's the way it can often work in the YouTube comments. And it's not nice. It's just not nice how people act with people. And people don't act like that in real life. You can't. If you had that level of aggression in real life, you wouldn't get served in a shop. You'd be kicked out of parents' evening. You just wouldn't be able. Your food would be getting spat in a restaurant. You could not continue to be that aggressive and that nasty. So the majority of the people that are doing that are not nasty in real life. They're choosing to do so, or they can't help themselves. Might be a combination of both. They might just be so frustrated with a lot of things that social media becomes their punch bag, and that is certainly what particularly videos are after losses. And I've always known that. People are pissed off, right? And what they can't do, they can't moan at Hunan Lopetegui, they can't moan at David Sullivan, they can't moan at Karen Brady. What they can do is moan in the comments, and rightly so, by the way, if you moan about it. But I think a lot of the time, the wrong person gets used as a punch bag. On the David Moyes thing, I think I'm not much of one for like modern words and modern phrases. People use toxic too much, and people use. There's a load of words that are just used too much. Someone who might have just been a bit of a prick gets called a narcissist, for instance. Do you know what I mean? Someone who might have got something wrong is accused of gaslighting. There's a load of stuff. One of the ones I don't like is toxic. I think toxic is thrown around too much. But I think, so I'm just pointing out that I don't go for these terms to start off with. But I looked at Twitter in the last couple of days, thought that's toxic. Not just Twitter as a whole. You may well find Twitter as a whole. See, the thing is, let me tell you what I do. I have no interest in politics. I have no interest in any of that stuff. I cannot stand it. And just to go back, talking about mental health, when I first went and had some counselling, the first thing my counsellor asked me was, "Are you on social media?" And I said, "What?" I said, "Why are you asking that?" And she said, "Because it's really, really bad for your mental health." Anyway, she was absolutely right. Obviously, as part of my job means I have to go on. So when I go onto social media, I go into the search bar and I just type West Ham. So I'm not getting all this, maybe I live in something of a little bubble. I'm not getting Elon Musk, I'm not getting Ukraine, I'm not getting Donald Trump, I'm not getting all this stuff that I can see, because you can't avoid it totally, but you can see it's making people angry, you can see people are upset, you can see all this stuff, right? But I find it quite draining. I find particularly because I've been on I've been on medication before for my mental health, right? And I think if I'm going to stay off that stuff, which I try and do, and I like to do, I probably need to limit the amount of negativity I have access to. All right, no, look. Do I stick my head under a rock? I think I do, but I think I probably need to do it, and that's the pathway I've chosen. So to blot all that out, I just type West Ham into the search bar. So I tend to just get West Ham stories, right? And that's really all I'm looking at. But you'll still see people fighting. So that's really what I'm seeing. The David Moyes stuff has been bad. And let me tell you exactly what I'm talking about here. It is as if there are people that are really upset that we got rid of David Moyes. And then there's a group of people that hounded him out. And it's as if there's nothing in between, which there is, right? And I'm in between, right? But you're not allowed to be in between. So the people that are really upset that David Moyes has gone are, I've got to say, really going at the people who probably wanted him gone. Not only that, they're being goaded, they're being taunted, and it is creating a really, really bad atmosphere, I think, on social media. A really bad atmosphere. Because David, and what's happening is, you've got a lot, and there's one, I'm not going to name it, not because I'm afraid to say, because I don't want to give it any exposure. I don't want to give it any oxygen, right? There's one account in particular that has taken to tweeting every bit of success that David Moyes has and using it as a means to goad and taunt and get a reaction from West Ham fans. I think it's not a nice thing to do. It's not a nice thing to do. Look, by the end, I wanted David Moyes to go, right? So it's hard enough. It is hard, as I'm not going to pretend otherwise, seeing him doing well and seeing Everton above us, right? I've got no ill feeling towards it. I don't want him to struggle, but I don't want him to be above West Ham. I bet there's 90% of people watching this think, yeah, all right, fair enough. But what's been happening is there's no room for the people in the middle with it. So the truth of the matter is, the version of David Moyes that Everton have right now is not the version we had. We had him for a bit, and he was good. What a guy to lead us through COVID, right? What a guy. And again, his style of football was absolutely brilliant for European football. We were really, I mean, the Freiburg one was one of my favourites. But it's almost like you're not allowed to. If you wanted David Moyes to go, you're not allowed to enjoy that stuff because you wanted him out. Basically, this is someone pointing at me, he's gone because of you. Well, that's not true. That's not true at all. I really enjoyed David Moyes when he was here, but by the end, he was that guy that you're seeing at the moment doing that. He keeps doing that, and he's up to the Everton fans. That wasn't the guy that was at West Ham at the end, particularly his last 7 months. He was sat with his head in his hands in the dugout. He'd stopped. There was times, particularly when we get thrashed. I can't remember which way it was. Either when Palace put 5 past us or Arsenal put 6 past us. He'd gone. He'd completely gone. You'd have to be completely oblivious to it to not notice the differences between the two versions of David Moyes. His time had been done. Now, maybe, just maybe, you would argue that it'd been worn down by West Ham. Maybe, just maybe, you would argue that he didn't receive the support from the club. Maybe you might argue that it was Tim Steidten's fault. Maybe you could argue any number of things. But I'll tell you this now. Up until his second last away game, the away fans were still singing, "We got Super David Moyes." So you have to pretend that never happened to make your point that all West Ham fans wanted him out. That wasn't the case at all. He still had a lot of support. And even more than support, he had a lot of gratitude for what he'd done. However, and this is the thing, the people that are basically really trying to goad West Ham fans, and some of them are other West Ham fans, don't take into account the nuance. They just think this version of David Moyes, if you just put him at West Ham, basically West Ham would be doing what Everton were doing now. They wouldn't. All right. By the end of it, David Moyes, and I can talk through all the things I thought he did well, but then I'll be over-explaining myself again. I've said I won't do that. Suffice to say, he gave some of the best, honestly, some of the best times I've had as a West Ham fan. David Moyes did. All right. He wasn't really the same after his coaching staff started to leave. Alan Irvine is such a big part of what he does. I don't know if you remember the time when David Moyes had COVID and he missed 2 games and he had to stay away from the club, and Alan Irvine, what did we beat? Did we beat Leicester 4-0 and then Wolves 3-0 or something like that? Alan Irvine was in charge. I'm not saying he's, that Moyes cannot do a good job. He can, but Alan Irvine's a really important part. If you know your history, Brian Clough and Peter Taylor, sometimes you just your number 2, I don't mean a poo, your number 2 is very, very important. I think probably if you'd have taken Irvine to Manchester United instead of Steve Round, things might have even worked out a little bit differently. He is his sounding board. He would stand there on the touchline with him. But Alan Irvine left. Irvine went back to, because he wanted to be closer to his family home. And that's understandable. He'd been, however long he'd been at West Ham, 2.5, 3 years. He'd done a couple of stints, I think. He wanted to go back up to live in Cheshire, which is where his family home. So I think he carried on a part-time basis, which helped. But by the time he was gone, David Moyes then started to juggle around. He then started relying a lot more on Paul Nevin. In the end, Nevin left. Something went on, we didn't know exactly what it was. Nothing was said. Stuart Pearce left. And I think the biggest one was when Mark Warburton left. And we know this because Mark Warburton came on Hammers Chat. The video's there if you want to go and search up Mark Warburton Hammers Chat. You'll hear him say this. He said, I had to leave because we had disagreements about football, and I had to leave to preserve mine and David Moyes' relationship, right? I'm just trying to create the reality of what happened here, right? That by the time David Moyes had left, I did a video saying he's like the loneliest man in football. Alan Irvine had left, Paul Nevin had left, Stuart Pearce had left, and Mark Warburton had left. And he looked lonely. He looked lonely. There are other things and other rumours which I'm just not going to say because it's not needed, and they don't sound particularly pleasant, and I can't. They're unsubstantiated. The stuff that happened on the training ground are unsubstantiated. They're just rumours. So you don't need to factor those in, all right? I'm just saying, for a lot of reasons, the David Moyes who was here at the end of West Ham, he'd run his course. We'd actually had a really good stint out of him. And the truth of the matter is, David Moyes was really good for West Ham, and West Ham was really good for David Moyes. It helped him repair his reputation, which had been really damaged at Manchester United, at Real Sociedad, and at Sunderland. I'd be interested to know, actually, I would love to know the stats with Irvine. I don't know if Irvine was with him in Sociedad. I don't know. I know he wasn't with him at Manchester United. I'd love to see the stats. But he needs his team around him. Who doesn't? And I understand it, by the way. There he was. However many miles Canary Wharf is from Lancashire. On his own. His mates had gone with a very, very small team of staff. I thought it was time to go. Don't mean he's a bad man. I thought what he did at COVID was brilliant. I love the fact he did charity work. But the point of the matter is here, that's the nuance of it. Yet these people are, and one of them a really, really big account, ramming it down West Ham fans' throats. And basically saying, there's David Moyes, I won't be shut up, and blah, blah, blah. He's aware that it's taunting. He's aware that it's goading. And I think he must be aware that it's an unpleasant thing to do. And I guess he can only enjoy seeing people getting wound up. And don't get me wrong, I think he takes a lot of stick himself. But I think it's difficult when you're going to put yourself in that environment, and you're going to chuck abuse out there. You're probably going to get abuse back. And I just look at it now, and I just think it's tough. Things couldn't be tougher in that respect. To see Moyes doing as well as he is, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I have thought, I wonder what would have happened if he'd have stayed on at West Ham. But then I quickly stopped myself because he wouldn't have had the support. He didn't have the support. He didn't have his backroom staff around him. He wasn't willing to take on either Tim Steighton's suggestions or even David Sullivan's suggestions on signings. I know we shouldn't have been running the club that way. I'm just telling you as it is. And maybe you turn around and say, well, David Sullivan's the problem, Tim Steighton's the problem. You may well be right. I'm just saying, by the end of it, he'd turned around and said, I want nobody, or the only person I want is Calvin Phillips. And just the whole thing had broken down. In many respects, he'd stopped making his brilliant signings, like Souček and like Bowen and some other really, really good guys. Maybe it would have been different. Maybe he would have thrived. Maybe he'd have got to the summer and I think he'd have loved Wan-Bissaka in the team, by the way. I think Wan-Bissaka could play under anyone's style. I mean, some people would say that maybe if he was given 150 million in the transfer window, he'd done okay. But again, he had spent, I think, £430 million in his time at West Ham. It's not like he'd never had any money to spend. He still would have had to rebuild the team, and who's to say? Let's be fair, it couldn't really have been done any worse than we did in the summer. But just because we did it badly doesn't mean that necessarily it was going to... Look, personally, I think there's bigger problems at the club. I really do. Anyway, I'm probably going to finish up there. I think I've probably said all I've got to say. You'd hope after 36 minutes that I wasn't going to leave here and think, oh, damn, shit, I wish I'd have said that. I think I've said it all. I think it's tough times at West Ham. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video. It's tough times. This is a cold. Not a good cup of tea. Weather's perked up a bit anyway. If you're still here, right away, thank you. Thank you. Honestly, sincerely, thank you. Whoever's left here now are probably the core listeners, the core subscribers, the people that are. And I honestly, I thank you for that. Honestly, couldn't do all this stuff without you. Apologies for all the adverts and all that stuff. Didn't feel it was right to chuck a sponsor in on this video. And sorry for taking up so much of your time, really. And I'm sure I'll be back tomorrow. But I'll be trying to. Do you know what they say? I think the phrase is "keep it real." I'll be trying to keep it a little bit real, really. I'm not going to tailor and edit what I'm saying anymore to appease a bunch of videos. I'm not even going to listen to them. The truth of the matter is, I might not get anything like that. I'm just going to mute it and I'll just never see it again. I don't know if that means it doesn't. I'm not sure. You've got this thing on YouTube, like a YouTube dashboard. I'm not sure if that means that nobody sees it, or I don't see it. They tell you that they'll be muted from the channel, but I'm not sure if that's the case. So look, apologies if you see that out there. I'm gonna do as best I can to stop anyone being nasty on here, and I think I need to probably get another moderator on here as well. I don't think you could ever make it. This is the thing, right? Like you say, sorry, I know I said I'd go, but like you say the word safe space. I think that people make too much of that. I don't want people to stop saying, mate, I think the formation you're suggesting is wrong, or mate, I think you're wrong about this manager, or I disagree. Actually, I think Ollie Scholes should be playing at left wing back. You know what I mean? Or to turn around and say we were shit in that game. I don't want to stop that. I don't want to stop anyone saying anything. But I think if we could just stop, stop people being bloody nasty to other people on there. Would be something, wouldn't it? I can't control it, but honestly, I've had a look. I've been on social media a little bit more in the last few days. I've had a look at it. I don't really like what I see. So, there you go. Anyway, that's that. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will catch up with you tomorrow.